Jess is here. Jess is our head of sales at Stellar Brands, also a visionary, which we're going to talk about that quite a bit. And I think we were just going to have a conversation about what it's like to be a visionary, and we'll explain what a visionary is. But first of all, is there some kind of disclaimer we need to use to like not get sued by EOS?
No, I mean,
No?
we just need to talk about that we self-implemented and,
Okay. I just want to
you
be very
know,
clear to anybody listening.
we
We are not
run on
EOS
EOS, but we don't use an implementer.
and we are
As long
not
as we're
EOS
not acting
implementers.
like this is an EOS episode and we don't have EOS in the title, and this is just more about, it's just more about the people who lead the organization with the ideas and who look out ahead and try to see
Okay.
the waves before people
I just don't want to
typically
get sued.
do, you
I don't want
know?
to get sued by EOS. But we're not EOS implementers. We are going to talk about EOS, but more specifically the visionary part. And you got me into this whole cult of EOS, and we've put that in place in our company as just an operating system for the business. But can you talk a little bit about? I mean, since you made me do this, or you didn't make me do it, but since you
Yeah.
convinced me to do it, can you talk about what a visionary is?
I think a visionary, just in a nutshell, is a person who has the big ideas, who can make things up out of thin air, kind of has a vision for what things could look like, how things could be improved, or maybe there's a big problem that needs to be solved.
Mm,
Um, Also, visionaries are really paying attention to trends and navigation. Like if you're a person who's watching the news all the time and trying to make some predictions about where things are going to land and then kind of see where you were in juxtaposition to that prediction, it's a good sign that you're probably a visionary. If you're creative and have a lot of ideas, you're not satisfied with the status quo, you yourself feel like you're constantly bored, that could be a sign that you're a visionary, because I think visionaries in general, they have these tiny mountains or these big mountains and they see them, they want to climb them. And a lot of times they want to take people along for the ride with them. Sometimes a visionary wants to take them along for the ride, so they have someone to get them there. Sometimes
mm,
they want to take them along for the ride because a rising tide lifts all boats. And,
yeah.
I think there's all kinds of visionaries out there. I think an interesting statistic about visionaries when I started exploring it myself was that only 3% of the population are visionaries,
Oh,
which makes a lot of sense. um, and, I think visionaries probably in general feel very much alone. I think they're probably an anti hero in a lot of ways. And they have to deal with all the different kind of personalities that come along with just having vision in general. I don't
mm.
know. What do you think?
What is a visionary? I think a visionary is a person that likes pain, like just inflicting large amounts of pain on themselves. Um, Maybe not that. I don't know. I never really. I wouldn't have thought of myself as a visionary per se. For the longest time, I just knew that I wanted to run a business, and I had a lot of like big grand ideas, but I had like absolutely no idea how to get to any of those places. And I also know that I was not, well, and am still not a person that's like, I'm not a very focused worker at all.
Yeah.
Like I kind of suck at like sitting down and just like, okay, I've got 10 tasks and I've got to get those things done in 4 hours. I'm really bad at that. But I have been my whole life. Like I was awful in school. I always used to like, my parents got so mad at me. They're probably really surprised that I've had any level of success in my life because I used to just finish like a quarter of my homework and then I would stuff it in my backpack, which looked like a complete disaster. And then I would lose that somewhere, and then I would just not turn in any homework. And they were always like, "Why aren't you like?" They see my like progress reports, my grades, and they'd be like, "What? Why are you failing like all of these classes?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Like maybe the teacher doesn't like me or something." But I knew it was because I just
I
hadn't.
think that's just a sign of I'm not satisfied with the status quo. I'm bored. I mean, your personal story of launching Millennial Money Man and what you and Mike went on to do with Laptop Empires. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a sign that you're not okay with just being told what to do
Well, very
all
much
the
that.
time.
I hate that.
You're
To
rebellious in
to my
nature.
own detriment. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Um,
I think one of the things that I have learned at 48 years old now, and I've been in the small business game for 30 years now,
Hmm.
is that wisdom wins, but risk rules.
Okay. Yeah. That's, I like that. I don't think I've ever heard that one before.
And I think the difference between that, a visionary who has self control and a visionary who does not, is the difference.
Yeah.
And I think
That's,
our attachment to risk changes over time as our seasons happen. But I just think in general, if you're just like, I know there's something more. And I don't want to confuse this with contentment,
mm,
because I think contentment is definitely something we should all work to understand and try to develop in our lives. But, there has to be this level of discontentment to just have vision that things could be different.
yeah.
And, our personal story, the way we started working together and why we're in the cult ring, I guess, together is, I was working with my friend and business partner, Marilyn, over at the Bottom Line, and she had launched the Bottom Line back in 96. And, she and I ventured up in 2013 to take things online, and you became a client through one of our other clients in
Hmm.
2019. And I didn't even really know what EOS was, or kind of this visionary language, until 2020, which is right when the pandemic was getting ready to start. And it just started to make so much sense about the different roles that we play. And I think you and I even had a conversation about roles and why it's important to have defined roles. And there's just this natural resistance. I mean, I'll give you examples of how I resisted in the 12 years at the Bottom Line. Like, Mike McAllowitz were certified profit first professionals at the Bottom Line. I retired as its visionary, and we can't wait to operate under your leadership at Stellar Brands and go through all that stuff with the Bottom Line and all the changes we're going to go through. But Mike McAllowitz, who's a prolific marketer, who's a serial entrepreneur himself, he kept promoting his profit first to us. And me and
Hmm.
Marilyn kept saying, this is crazy. Like, he just wants us to do bank balance accounting, and we can't do that. We've got to teach people how to understand balance sheets. And if there's
Right.
anything a visionary doesn't really enjoy, it's typically a balance sheet, because
It's fair.
that's, in the early days, it doesn't look super great sometimes, depending on what you're
No,
trying to do.
it's sad to look
And
at usually in the first
yeah,
couple of years.
visionaries are typically operators first, and they love that income statement. But here comes
Hmm.
Mike with a new idea and a fresh idea, thinking about the behavior of money and not necessarily the mechanics of the accounting. And it took me 2 years to just say, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
But same thing with EOS. Amy Porterfield, I remember when she started this concept of using an integrator back in 2017, I think. And I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't understand this, but it's all still the same thing. It's like there's nothing new under the sun. It's just
Right.
kind of a different way to do it, which is being dissatisfied with the status quo, or wanting to be creative, or have a like mindedness among people, which is, I guess, essentially what a cult is. It's
Yeah.
tribal in nature, there's a like mindedness to it, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It does pull you in. I think when we first met, I don't think I had any employees.
No, you
No,
did
I didn't.
not.
No, you convinced me to hire the first employee. Now they're multiplying like rabbits. Now I'm like, geez, this is hard too. Um,
It's all
but
hard.
yeah, it's all hard. But I had an all contract team, and I was trying. I was really like, I was always really frustrated with the way that things ran. It didn't matter if I had like a contract operations person or if I was doing myself or whatever. I was always just like, man, this feels so messy and disorganized, and I don't know how to fix it because my brain doesn't work that way. But I know this isn't good. And so I went through like all these different iterations of like kind of trying to implement operations in the companies, and then it would, we would try to figure out KPIs. Like I remember Googling like what a KPI is because I had no idea what it was. And then OKRs and all this stuff, and like we were trying to implement that, but it wasn't real. I don't know, it just wasn't a full system. So that's what I've liked about doing the EOS system is I tell people this all the time when they ask me about operations. I'm just like, just pick something. Like I don't, it doesn't have to be EOS. It can be anything, but just pick something that it's going to help you, I don't know, make your business less chaotic. Cause that's really how I feel like, it still feels that way sometimes, but like not as much anymore. Like I think in the first 8 or 7 years of my career, it was just like pure chaos. And it was just like, let's create stuff. Let's launch this thing. Let's do this. And I was making money, but it didn't feel stable. or it didn't feel like repeatable in any way.
Yeah.
And
Predictable.
yeah, and then once we started doing EOS and self-implementing, and then I read, I think it's Traction. I don't know. There's like a
Yeah,
million
it's the
EOS
book
books.
Traction that talks about the system. Yeah.
Yeah, but and then there's one that I think in all the books they kind of talk about like what is a visionary, what's an integrator.
Yeah. The
But then I read
rocket
the
fuel.
yeah Rocket Fuel. That's the one. Um, that was when I read the visionary part, and I was like, oh, I'm not an idiot. Like
No.
I'm actually like, there's other people that go through the same thing as me, where it's like you want to do big things, but you don't want to do all the little things. And I
Right.
felt a lot less guilty about how I worked in the business. Cause that was the
Well,
one thing I
that's
do
good.
remember. Like I held a lot of just kind of guilt around not being able to act like a operations person, I
Yeah.
guess, but it was like, I was never built for that. So as we've gotten into it, I mean, I think that I have accepted the visionary thing, and I've really leaned into it. Even like last night, I think I spent 4 hours last night planning out the next 10 years of the company. Like I've got it all mapped out.
That's so
Um,
good.
but it takes time to kind of get to that point where you're like, oh, my job is to like think.
Your
Like,
job is to think. That's pretty much
yeah.
it. Yeah.
But if you don't have a system built around that, I remember before we had EOS, and I had an operations person. It was the first employee I ever hired. I remember trying to like, we would plan out projects, and I would kind of say like, this is what I want to do. This is where I think we should go. And then he would map all of it out for the team. And then he would be like, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I just did what I'm going to do. I just told you what we're doing. Like,
Yeah.
but there was always this like, I don't know, what tasks am I supposed to be completing? And that's what I've liked about the EOS system is like, there's not really, I mean, you sit in different seats and everything. We can get like way into the weeds on EOS, but like at the end of the day, my job is to think and make sure that we don't run ourselves into the ground,
Yeah.
like, and stay
Somebody
ahead of
has to
stuff.
say 30,000 feet above. Now, that's a luxury that you have to earn the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It took me
do
10
want to say
years.
that. Yeah. And I have great envy for visionaries who don't necessarily have that integrator button in them, that make it
Mm-hmm.
real button. They can make it up and they can make some of it real. They're creative, they're smart, they're thought leaders. I'm talking like visionaries are in the third person, but it's us.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever.
But I think one of the things, if you talk about wisdom wins but risk rules, for me personally in my journey, I had all this kind of integrator background because I have an operations background. And
Yeah.
so I struggled on the other part where I really, towards the end of my journey, which is why I just knew it was time to just let go, was that there was just so much that I was trying to control to create this product or whatever, that I lost my way on how to leverage the team to scale it. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For sure.
And it really kind of messed with my psyche, especially around sales, because it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of like, I don't want to sell something that I have to take care of.
Right.
And I think visionaries have to really pay attention to their blind spots. I don't think their team is the appropriate place to identify all of their blind spots, because I don't think that they're thinking at that level. They're thinking about other things because of
Mm-hmm.
their role inside the company. And so it's definitely a big growth journey. And I was 36 when Marilyn and I decided to take this little tiny baby business into the big boy world.
Yeah.
And I'm 48 now. And,
Mm-hmm.
my kids were 8, 13, and 15, and now they're 19, 25, and 27. So there's a lot of life,
Right.
and we had 3 different brands kind of speaking to that creativity part. Like, I think creativity and ideas are wonderful, but unless you can execute them with consistency, they don't actually produce anything sustainable,
I've been
you
there.
know?
Yeah. To that a
And
million
so the
times.
idea, yeah, you're just taking courses and all that. I find the one-on-one mentorship and help and coaching and more of a constant. That's one of the things I just loved about the structure, is like, when you don't have structure, you need to put a structure in place until you can get the structure you want, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
or be okay with the structure. And I was just always of the mind of like, let's not be creative with operations. Let's be creative with all the other things.
Yeah, we had a big. I remember when Ariel and I were sitting down, and we were trying to figure out, I mean, there was a long period of time where we were like, what operating system are we going to use? Because Ariel had just moved into the head of operations role. She had moved up through the company and everything. And so she was new to it, and I was still figuring out what the heck I'm supposed to be doing. And that was one of the big fears that we had, because I think that we're generally a pretty fun company. We're not, we definitely don't take ourselves too seriously. But I think we were both really afraid of losing that. Just if we put too much structure in place, then are we going to lose what makes this fun?
Yeah.
And so I think we procrastinated implementing anything for a long time, because we were just actually, no, I'm sorry. We did try to implement something. We were like, we'll build our own system, which was a disaster. But we
But
just
you got to
realized,
try, right? That's part
yeah,
of being an entrepreneur. So,
it is. It is. It was a good learning lesson for both of us, because it was just like, okay. And I remember you were in those conversations too, and you were good about just like, all right, well, yep, go ahead and build your own thing. Like, good luck with that. And so we got into that for, I don't know, probably 6 months or maybe even longer than that. And then we were just like, okay, this sucks. Like, this is not it. This is also not good. And so then we finally did EOS. And what I found is that it's still just as much fun. It might even be a little bit more fun, because it's more, there's less guessing about what's going on. I mean, as a
yeah.
company, we still have a ton of stuff going on. And like, I'm always trying to think like, how can we streamline this? Are we doing too many things? Um,
Well, I
but
think same pageness and reducing complexity and communication is just incredibly difficult because I mean, you're a teacher,
yeah.
like that's your background. I'm not a teacher, but I don't know what my background is. I just kind of float around and just kind of attach myself to everything. But I remember as a young girl, that's what I did. I sat at this little library desk and I made plans and I
Mhm.
taught my baby dolls. And, I just, even as a person who came up in business, I was, typically a manager or department head of sorts. And I think people just naturally, if you want to have a team based business or not. And I think
Mm.
that's one of the big things that you have to understand. But then doing what you can to create same pageness and reduce complexity. Like if you've ever been in a relationship with your life, you know that that's a challenge, even
Yeah.
with one person, let alone 10.
Yeah.
So,
Did you want a team-based business? Did you know that from the beginning?
yes, I just felt um, within me that I just felt very purpose to create jobs and opportunities for myself and for others.
Mm.
And I just really liked this kind of education process. I loved learning. I'm a lifelong learner, and I used to be a pretty insatiable learner, but I'm finding that I'm learning more slowly now, but still learning. And I just was very dissatisfied in a lot of
Mm.
ways about a lot of things. I also never really understood why things worked the way they worked, why they had to be, I don't know, the way they were. But
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've had to learn is that not everything is broken.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good one to learn. I mean,
Not
it is
everything
true.
needs to be fixed or reinvented. Not everything is broken, including parts of yourself. Not
Right.
everything is as broken as you think it is.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. I think about that kind of stuff a lot. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, what am I doing? I
And
don't think
there's
it is much
nothing.
anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
these days, I think you get, as you get older, you get more comfortable with yourself. But for a long time, I was like, what the heck am I doing? Because one thing that really bothered me is that I saw people, specifically, this really bothered me early. I saw people that grew up either wealthy or they grew up with parents that were in business. And these were like people that were peers. And this is mostly when I was in the personal finance blogging space, like when I first started out. Like, I passed up a lot of people, which happens, but there were a lot of people that just seemed like way better at business than me. But they were the same age. And I was really frustrated by that for a long time. Um, and so I spent a lot of time going like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I get this figured out? Like, why can't I just focus, and like see this bigger picture? Like there were people that did these great, it was like they could see the future almost, and they timed the market perfectly, and they would like sell their websites like right when it was at the height. And I went
Yeah.
through a period of time where I missed that like 3 or 4 times. I was like, what am I doing?
Mm.
Like, why am I not able to figure this out? But as time's gone on, like I realized like it's pretty much because I just didn't want to sell, or I just wanted to build something bigger, and I didn't feel
Yeah.
like where I was at the point I wanted to be. And then I also saw, and I realized this later, like I didn't want to go through every one of my friends that sold their business has gone through like a long period of depression after they do it. And it's one of those things like nobody really talks about it. It's like if you like just scroll on Twitter or X or whatever and you see these like people talking about how they sold a business. I noticed every single time somebody sold, there was this period of like elation because they had a lot of money now. And then they went through, it was like they were wandering in the desert for months, years, and they totally lost purpose. And then what I noticed most of them did was they went back and did the exact same thing. They would either buy their business back, which was really common in the blogging industry at the time, or they would start like the same business. And so I just was like, well, maybe I'll just keep going instead of doing
Yeah.
that. Cause I was like, I don't want to go through that period of time. Like that sucks, you know?
Well, it does suck, to be perfectly honest with you, retiring and changing the whole
Hmm.
trajectory of your career. I think one of the things that I have experienced is that sometimes we sell and we exit out of just sheer necessity because we've depleted and burnt out, and
Sure.
I honestly feel like that's my story. There was just so much pushing big rocks up hills for so many years and just really driving without seeing the whole landscape.
Right.
There's a lot of things that we always see in hindsight, and then going through very devastating, unexpected health issues. Those things
Sure.
rock you, and then depleting all of your savings, even when walk away from a business. Like, there's lots of reasons why people are
Hmm.
like, I need to change. This needs to
Yeah.
change. And I think for, just the bottom line, Marilyn and myself, and just in conversations with you, like, if your business is really solving problems and it's really taking care of people, what you want more than anything is for your business to go on and keep doing that.
Yeah.
You want to see it be successful, even if you're not the visionary that can lead it to the next level. And I
Right.
just felt so strongly that you had all these qualities that would help take the bottom line into, a really great direction.
We'll find
And you
out.
have a totally different leadership style than I do because you tend to operate a bit more hands off. And I actually love that.
Yeah.
You're
I
not
do
the person that's
sometimes.
trying to technically figure everything out because you know the value of the team figuring it out and having people that can do the job.
Right.
And that's really the challenge, is finding the people who can do the job and
Mhm.
having the patience to help them develop.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, a lot of that it has just because I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. Like, why am I that way? And a lot of it's just like the fear of being trapped. I've always like when I was a teacher, I remember walking in the building and going like, oh my god, because I walked in the building and I saw this guy that was doing my job. He was like a band director slash drumline instructor, and he was like 55 years old, and I saw him and he looked miserable, and I was like, oh my god, that's going to be me in 30 years. Like, I'm going to be that guy. And then I just immediately was like, this I felt like the walls closed in. And I was like this is terrible. And so like from the first day of my teaching career, I was like, I've got to find a way out of this. And I was going to I was going to start a swimming pool maintenance company, which would have really sucked, but I was going to do it. I remember I was reading what's that book called? It's called Trading. Oh, it's like trading for life or trading for a living, something like that. It was like a stock, like an options trading book. And I was just reading that at my desk one day, and I left it on the desk. And then like my boss called me in to like have a conversation with me. And this was in my like first month of teaching. And he was like, are you going to leave? We just hired you. I was like, I just got like a third of the way through this book. Like, I don't even know. But I was always looking for something to
Yeah.
do immediately after. And then once I started the blog, I was just like, this is cool because I started making money and I was doing what I wanted to do. But then I was like, I'm the entire business. It's just me. And like now I've got a job, but it's
Right.
like I own this job, and that's not what I want. Some people love that. I've got friends that
Yeah. It really
people.
works for a lot of people. That's why
It
I think
does.
it's so fantastic about entrepreneurship, because it's like it can be what you want it to be.
It can be, yeah. And it just, you have to figure that out. And I was just like, I don't want to be the face of the business, but now I've got this business where I'm the face of it. So I got to figure out how to transition
Yeah.
out of that. And like every step of the way, I've been just trying to figure out like, how can I not be the face of the business long
Right.
term? Because I look at like Dave Ramsey, and Dave
Right.
Ramsey is
Well,
like
he figured
still,
it out by
he did.
introducing new talent, expanding his products, repositioning his messaging and his marketing. Like,
Yeah.
Him and the Maxwells of the world, like, as Michael Hyatt's, they built their businesses up on the backs of their personal brand. And then they had to figure out how to take care of all these people that had come alongside them so
Yeah.
that when they move into different things, they don't have to change. Donald Miller went
Yeah.
through the same thing, Amy Porterfield, like Tony Robbins, like we could just go through the whole list. Like,
Right.
and what I like to say to people and remind myself is that if you make it about the money will never, ever keep you. So
No.
this is the Money Shop episode. And, all we do in both of our businesses, Bobby, has been about money. I
Hmm.
honestly feel like I'm the biggest financial misfit on the planet. And I think it's just hysterical how God somehow was like, and you're going to do this. But I think it's because I needed that. I needed that
Hmm.
education. I needed that literacy. I needed that container to grow, because one of the things I do care passionately about is that whatever we're doing to serve someone, we're walking through it. We're not theorizing it and then reading a book and throwing something together. Like, what I love about us and what I love about a lot of the businesses that I know is that, they have really worked on their trade to take care of
Hmm.
somebody, to learn something new, to get ahead of someone else so they can bring that other person along.
Yeah.
And I think the money the money conversation is such an emotional, like, it's just the biggest emotional thing that I think people walk through in general, because it's attached to their dreams, it's attached to their necessities, it's attached to their legacies, it's attached to their short-term future. Like, there's just so much that our society has created this system that keeps us entangled.
Yeah.
And
That
so,
capitalism. It does
yes,
get you, in the
and we do
consumerism.
like capitalism. We love
I
it,
love it. Yeah.
actually,
I love it,
like,
but
and
you got
I
to be
think that
careful though.
I want to be a part of anything that allows us to have the freedom of choice and will, and that we have the opportunity to make as much as a Warren Buffett, or we have the opportunity to just make enough and just sit
Hmm.
our days on the lake if we want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think, back to your comment about a lot of times we fear going into things because we're afraid the structure is going to reduce the fun. I think a lot of times people can take money a bit too seriously too,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate, but I've had, a couple of occurrences in my life and my career now where people have literally taken their life because of financial decisions. And that's also something I would never want to happen. And I
Right.
can relate to that myself in some ways sometimes. And so
Hmm.
I think our service to other entrepreneurs is to help encourage them that this can change overnight. It can change in a week. It can change in a year, right? Like, it comes and goes, it ebbs and flows, right? So,
God, it does. It's so annoying too. That concept, because there have been, I think, at least two, maybe three times in the business where I'm like, oh, I made it. Like, I finally freaking made it. And I remember the last time it happened, I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to struggle with anything again. Like, I think this is going to be awesome. Like, I remember really thinking that. And I wish that, like, the other part of my brain had been like, shut up, stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. But I do remember, like, reaching points in the business where I was like, oh, it's just going to be up from here. And this is going to be amazing. And then, like, the down part comes and you're like, oh God, this sucks so bad, and like then you're fighting again. And I feel like the interesting thing
it's a
about
new mountain.
it is, and it's like you get to a certain point and you feel like, oh, I've made it. And then I don't know, business always change. And I feel like it goes in cycles. I'm sure you probably experienced that
Yes.
in your career too, where it's like you'll do really great in the business and like cash flow is amazing and you feel like you can spend whatever you want on whatever and invest in any new thing. And then all of a sudden, like, something happens, and it can be anything, and it can blindside
Anything.
you. And then all of a sudden you're fighting again and you're back in fight mode for a year or whatever. But what I have realized is that every single time that happens, like, I have more skills every time I have to start
Every
fighting
time.
again. And usually the floor is like higher than what it was before. Not always, but like it's at least like I'm not back at absolute zero with the business.
Correct.
And like,
You never could be as an entrepreneur. There's just
no,
no way that's possible.
no.
You have
And there's
too
a lot
many
of ways to make
skills you
money.
develop.
Yeah. And I'm also finding too, I'm one of those people that believes like things happen for a reason. It's like every time that I go through the fight period, it's like, or something bad, or I did something stupid, it's like it always comes back to like, oh, it's a good thing I went through that because now I know how to
Yes.
do this. And
Now
that's what
we're
I feel like.
prepared for what's coming.
Yeah. And
Because
now with
there's
like
always
Stellar, it's
something
like,
coming,
yes,
and
yeah, it's
we're
always the
always
asteroid.
being prepared. It's kind of how I feel about things now.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when I was sitting down last night and and I'm excited, I'm going to, on the L10 on our leadership team meeting next week, I'm going to like show everybody what I've been working on.
Awesome.
But I was just like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like it finally all clicked into place, like how all of these different things that we want to do and businesses we want to acquire, like it all finally crystallized for me because I've been really struggling with that for months because I couldn't see it. Like I always feel
Yeah.
like I need to be able to
When
like
you go
see where
dark,
we're
it's
going.
painful, ain't it? Like
God, it
when
sucks.
it's so painful.
Yeah, it sucks. And I've been in that place for a while where I'm like, okay, we have good things going on, but I don't really know where this is going. And I'm the person that's supposed to know where this is going. Like it's
Yes.
like the blind, leading everybody else. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. But it finally
Well, you know
crystallized
what I
and it was
love
like,
about that? Yeah, what I love about that is though that's true. That's real. Sometimes
yeah,
it is you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I've got these people I need to lead and I'm in a wilderness season. I don't have any vision. I can't see the future. Like what's happening?" Like
yeah.
yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And it all, I mean, I think I had a conversation with Ariel 2 days ago where she was asking me, she was like, where do you see, and she was just asking about different parts of the business, like, where do you see this going? And where do you see this going? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I'm not sure. Mostly because we've all been in the weeds for the last 6 months or more.
12
And
months, I would say, just,
yeah,
transitions and decisions and because that's
lots of
the other
stuff.
thing. Nothing happens as fast as you want anything to happen.
No, no. As much as I try to force it, it just doesn't. I'm learning that too, and I think that's a good lesson. But yeah, it just finally like I was looking at all the things that we're going to do, and I was like, wow, this is actually drawing on every part of my entrepreneurship journey so far. Like I'm adding pieces from everything that I've done well and everything I haven't done well, and it's like forming this new thing. And I'm sure this what I've come up with sounds very secretive, but it's really not. We've been talking about this stuff for a while, but like I'm sure that plan will change quite a bit over time too. But at least I'm finally like, oh, I freaking see it. I can see it. I know where we're going. Like this is all going to work out. And so I'm I'm happy about that.
That's so
It's been a long
awesome.
time.
I love that. And I can't wait for that. That's the role. You
Mm-hmm.
and I have talked extensively about this is like, as you purchased and acquired the bottom line and we've tried to figure out how life would be as one company and what do you do with two visionary heads. Well, a lot of times visionaries are the reason why things happen with cash flow. They're the
Mm-hmm.
first salesperson, they're doing it all just like you did in those early days. And I think one of my I have a big heart for visionaries. Whether you call yourself that or not, I could care less. I always
Mm-hmm.
thought one day I'd be like that hitch person. I think I've told you about this before,
I
where
don't
it's
think so.
just like, you're the person that the visionaries are kind of, you're behind them and kind of
Mm-hmm.
giving them wind and helping them. And just have a tremendous heart for visionaries. Just number one, because I am one and I was one,
Yeah.
and it's not easy. It's very lonely.
Yeah.
And you can't really make friends. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I learned this 10th round in my journey, because I'm starting to see now that your decades and your seasons and your rounds, there really is themes to it. It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy. But this idea that you can make friends in your business, I think I've always known that. I've always been taught that. But I think when you start running your own business, you work so tight knit together, you become a family. The reality is you're still kind of not in the same mental space as your team is, and you're
Yeah.
not going to serve in the same way they are, and you can't expect that.
No, not at all.
And you have to find your room to be in and your peers to be in, because um, you're going to end up making people that shouldn't be those people, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not prepared for it, and neither are you. And there's, good things and benefits to that, and then there's consequences to that. And so I think if people just really learn how to take away that wisdom wins part, wisdom wins, but risk rules, right? Like what you were talking about of like, oh, we're now on the downturn again or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody goes through it.
Yeah.
And that's the risk part. It's like, well, we could be stable and complacent, but eventually that's going to die too, because if you're not evolving, you're going to die.
Yeah.
That's just entrepreneur 101.
It is. And it's Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, I feel like with the risk part of it, one of the things where, because there's been so many times where it's like I've had like eggs and too many eggs in one basket. Like I went through a period where it was like, okay, just need to diversify like crazy, and then it was
Yeah.
just like we diversified all over the place, and then it was like we didn't get any traction on any of them.
Then there's no focus. And you're like,
Yeah, so it's what I'm realizing now, and as I was thinking about it the last couple of days, like I have to think in decades now. I can't think in years or quarters necessarily, unless I have to for whatever moment we're in. But like when I'm thinking about the business, like I've got to think about decades, and I'm going to think like, okay, we're going to spend this next 3 years doing this thing, and then we're going to add this piece after we've got that solidified. Like that's starting to make a little bit more sense to me.
mm-hmm.
But it's just it's like you can't over diversify for risk, but you have to diversify for risk as well, because like the
Yes.
market changes so quickly, especially with all this AI stuff and all that. Like
Yes.
it's just everything's changing really quickly, and so it's like you got to figure that out. But the other thing, to go back to a point you were kind of talking about earlier, is like where it feels lonely sometimes. I don't know if I've necessarily felt like super lonely as a visionary, but one thing I have realized is that I had to be super careful about what I say. It's like because I've realized that I'm kind of a verbal processor, or like I don't even know if I'm an oversharer, but like there will be times where I talk to Ariel about something, and I'll just like I'll mention something that I'm worried about with the business, and then I can tell she's like, holy crap, what? Like there's I'm seeing this like big existential thing coming that's going to wipe us out. And so that's actually been a very difficult thing for me to navigate. I think I'm getting better at it, but it's like you really have to like think, okay, if I say this thing out loud to somebody, how are they going to perceive it? They're not thinking about things the way that I am right now. They're just trying to do their job, and like that's been difficult. So I am curious if you ever had that issue too, or if it's
All
just
the
kind of
time. All the
yeah.
time. Where it's just like, well, I am definitely an oversharer. Like,
Mm,
that is kind of my brand. And it's trauma induced. I've learned
mm,
that my oversharing is the result of things within my control and outside of my control. So I think understanding yourself, and,
yeah.
I've been in talk therapy for 10 years, and I think being conscious and aware of your own kind of like what's happening is important. But to your point, I have always been like, okay, this person is not wired or designed. They're not the container to hold this.
Hmm.
And what makes it challenging about the number one and the number two is that those people should be able to hold space for whatever number one is thinking. But
Sure.
if you're developing a young team, if your team is green, if you're trying to bring, if again, wisdom wins, but risk rules, right? And so an integrator by design is supposed to be creating stability
Hmm.
and predictability and permanence and all those things. And so they're wired for that. So when you come in with this middle of the night, dark night of the soul thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I have done. And, I call it basically like vomiting all over people, things that should not be said. But I think it's because that's your container and that's your space, and you don't have a different space to do that in,
Yeah.
and then this is supposed to, I think business is very much like marriage. And I think, even in How to Be a Great Boss, which is a book that we have
Hmm.
to pay attention to inside our organization here at Stellar Brands, is being a boss is a lot like being a good parent. They say that in the book. You have to repeat yourself constantly, but it's also being mindful about what we say, when we say it, and how we say it. And I am notorious. I have been dinged for my tone since I started working. I always say things that get me in trouble, or I just somehow, if I say things out loud, people think it's going to happen, because a lot of
Right.
times things that I say eventually end up happening. And so now everybody's walking around like, oh my gosh, we're not doing. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And there have been times in the past, probably, I'd say 2 years ago. Um, I I had two employees, two guys that were like, they would always press me for stuff. And it was like, they always wanted to get like one-on-one time with me for whatever reason, which I don't know if I should be doing with everybody, but I like that because I feel like I like
yeah.
building relationships with people. But I found that people, I'm going to say this, this is going to sound like maybe offensive to some people, maybe, but it's like people that are lower down in the organization, they want to figure out what the heck is going on up at the top. And so they'll kind of like sneakily almost like press you to answer some things about things that I really shouldn't be talking about. And there were a couple times where I was like, because I overshared or whatever, like I could tell they got super freaked out about what I was talking about. And then they immediately start worrying about their jobs, or they start worrying about their
Yeah.
future in the company. So I think that's actually been one of the harder things for me to navigate. Like, okay, when do I just keep my mouth shut or deflect? Even though I don't like doing that kind of stuff, but I think I've gotten better at it. But also,
Well,
like,
I
I feel
think
like
you
we're all a
learn
little
to be
closer at
better.
Stellar. So
Yeah. I think you learn to be better.
yeah,
I just
yeah,
think you learn where the hot stoves are, and it's like we were talking, it's a big growth journey. And
yeah.
so you're like, oh, I didn't like how that felt. But that's not to say that, and I don't think it's about, it's about the roles and responsibilities and the ownership they carry, and are they a stakeholder or not? Not every
Hmm.
person in your company is a stakeholder. And I think the challenge with smaller businesses, which, the 2 to 3 person team based business, that is very common, and it's
Hmm.
very hard to not make it personal.
Right.
This is the person you spend all the time with,
Hmm.
and then, where you don't like to feel like you're being trapped. One of my big things is I don't want to feel like I'm being owned,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and I just have this big aversion to it. And I think when we're asking entrepreneurially minded people to come into an entrepreneurially spirited organization, there's just those natural communication challenges we're going to have, because
Hmm.
they were okay coming on board with a company that was small. It's very common in startup, kind of cultures too, where people just kind of do the sweat equity. And
Yeah.
when they don't see things happening the way you communicated them, that's the one thing I've learned, is just stop making promises.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just don't make any promises, because you can make all the plans in the world, but then whatever happened in this quarter is going to impact the next quarter, and there's a lot within your control and outside of your control between those quarters.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what I've learned too.
Yeah, the
Like,
asteroid can hit in between quarters. I mean,
yes.
I've gone through that where it's like, God, I mean, there's been times where I'm like, God, this is so. I remember telling the team probably 3 years ago, I was like, it just felt so easy what we were doing. Like we were just crushing it. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. This is like so easy. But I did have at least the foresight back then to go like, I don't think it's always going to be this way. Like in my mind, I kind of like had this idea of like, this is going to be easy. We're going to keep going. But I also like was kind of cautiously optimistic at the same time. Um, but I've just realized like you even saying stuff like that, you can't really say stuff like that. You just gotta be real careful with the way that you talk to people. But
Well,
it's okay. I mean,
if you care about the people you are around, like, I don't know that people who don't care are going to struggle with these things, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
so every business and every leader and every culture is different. So I think we're talking about scars and wounds because we care, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And if we didn't, it wouldn't bother us that much. And I don't want to turn the care button off so much that we're not feeling our way through things with people. Because if anything, we're going to need people, especially with this age of AI that's entering in. That's been my big stick for many, 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 many years. So,
Yeah. I used to, this is a totally different subject, but like well, maybe not the visionary stuff that I was talking about where I was like planning out the next 10 years. It was the first time that I actually felt like ChatGPT was useful. Like I've been using it for so long and I was like, this is going to take over the world. Like this is going to replace humans. Like this thing is stupid. But I think now that the memory function that they added where it can recall past conversations and it's like that has actually been very helpful because I can throw an idea at it and then maybe I threw an idea at it 2 months ago and then I thought about it again. I took it from a different angle and it can kind of like reproduce it for me and spit it back to me. And like that has actually been super helpful. It's been the best use case that I've seen for it, where it's not like a therapist or a coach or anything, but it's
right.
more of just a mirror for your own
The
ideas. But then it
ideating
can,
and brainstorming function
yeah,
of it to kind of help you cast vision, I agree, it's a really great tool for that.
it's good for that. And then I've also been doing a thing lately where it's like I'll say, hey, what do you think about this plan that I have for the business? Like, what do you think it's good? And of course, GPT is always like, oh, this is an amazing plan. You're such a genius, whatever,
Yeah.
And then
It's
I'm like,
bias shows constantly. I
yeah, it's
have to
like,
tell that thing, like, don't like me, don't tell me my ideas are great, be super critical.
yeah. So that's what I do usually now. I'll say, okay, let's steel man this. Like, give me the worst case scenario of what can happen with all of this, and it will do that. And so then I can kind of keep going and change the ideas around. So it's just been, but you're right with the AI stuff. It's like we are going to need people. I think some things are going to go away. I've given like multiple AI predictions
It's
on
like
this
any,
podcast, but
yeah.
some things will go away and some things will change. But I do think net it's going to be a positive. I think it's going to help, like for what I just said, like for visionaries that need to just like spitball ideas at something and like kind of have a repository, I guess, of their ideas. Like it's really useful for that. And so my
Hmm.
hope is that it's going to make us more efficient over time. It's going to help us with structure and just ideas and making sure that we're really testing our ideas against things. And like, I'm actually getting more excited about it.
Yeah.
I'm out of the existential dread part that I had at first because I was just like, maybe I don't know, maybe I'll have to retire in 10 years because there will be no people left to do anything. But I don't think that's the case anymore.
I think it'll be pretty, I think the technological advances will be truly exponential in the last 10 years compared to what we've seen in the last 20.
Yeah.
And I'm actually excited about kind of more of the rote functions that it could probably take care of. 98%. I don't think any tech's flawless, not even super
No.
intelligence. And so I think that's going to be really fun to figure out. And I think for people who are really focused on how can I create value, how can I support, how can I encourage, I think those types of entrepreneurs are going to really, and I think they're going to get like one thing I want to say to the person listening right now is that Bobby and I have been in the trenches for over a decade now,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're listening and just trying to decide to partner with us on all the many things we do around here, um, you can't think about yourself 12 years in based on how we're talking and all the things, but hopefully you can, extrapolate our wisdom. But I do think where technology is going to come in, if you're tech agile in any way, and if you're not, make that your goal to
Right.
become a little more tech proficient. You're going to be able to really expedite, your service to others in a way that we had to kind of slog through,
Yeah.
and I think you and I have both experienced seasons in our entrepreneurial career where we had lightning in a bottle and then it was like struggle bus city, you know?
Yes. That's been the story of my career so far.
And
Uh,
so it's just, I think that it's probably encouraging to me. I think another thing is I have a son who has a congenital heart defect. And, one of the health crises that caused my retirement was kind of his issue coming to a fold last June. And he's been trying to get his permit now for many years. He's got cognitive processing issues, and autonomous driving is going to help him have some
yeah.
dignity
Yeah.
and be allowed to get on the road eventually. And, he needs a new heart and other organs, and technology is going to make a way for that to be possible. And, when he was first born, they said he'd make it into his teen years, and now he's 25. So
Yeah.
I'm all for technological advancements. I'm
Heck
really
yeah.
excited about the medical advancements. And I think there'll be some really cool ways that a lot of people who want to solve problems can come in and help others do, including just supporting people and encouraging them and mentoring them. I think mentorship is going to be on the rise. So I
Yeah,
think
I
there's a
think so
lot of
too.
cool things that will come.
No, we're in a cool place. For a while, I was like, when AI just first rolled out, I was like, God, why did this happen while I'm in this part of my career? Like, why couldn't I have been at the end of the career or something and just, sold and got out? But now I've been more excited. Like, oh, I think we're actually at the beginning of something that we're going to ride the wave of it. And it's going to be really cool.
I do
Um,
think that you're going to have to, it's going to be a lot easier to realize when people don't have experience.
mhm. Yes.
And I think people should not circumvent learning
Hmm.
because the AI can think in a way they think. I think our critical thinking skills don't need to go away.
Right.
And I think we need to do what we can to continue to encourage learning and education and not abdicate that or
Hmm.
outsource that. Does
Yeah.
that make
Oh, I totally agree.
sense?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because every person that doesn't know anything that takes some course on like how to start a business using AI, they're all going to put out the same slop. And there's just, I mean, the AI stuff, it's like it doesn't, you can't factor in human relationships. And like if you have clients, like that's a big part of it is just actually being able to talk to somebody and like come to some kind of an agreement on something or solve their problems. And a lot of business I've found is more like therapy for people
Mm-hmm.
almost,
Yeah.
especially if you're in like kind of an education space. And that's just stuff that AI is not going to be able to figure out very well. I don't think. Who knows? Maybe it
Well,
does.
just the accounting and tax alone, like, we've been testing and piloting analysis functions and stuff like that with the reporting, and I'm super excited about that. I've piloted like tax calculations for planning
Hmm.
purposes through that thing. It gets stuff wrong. It
Yeah, it
also
gets.
gets confused. So there's that need
Yeah,
for checks and balances is still going to exist.
yeah. Well, and it gets
And AI
confused, but
can't read the room.
it can't, and it gets confused in a way where it's really confident, giving you wrong information. Like it's very
Yes.
difficult to tell if it's actually real or not what it's telling you. But like I've done a lot of different tests of like I know a lot about a certain subject and I'll ask it, and it gives you like the most confident wrong answer that you've ever seen. And people are
Yeah.
going to unfortunately people are going to take that and run with it and provide services to clients and screw it up for them. So I
Yes.
agree. You have to have experience.
You
One
still
cool
need to be
thing.
a professional in the world. Don't
Yes.
abdicate that.
100%.
Just show up for yourself and show up for others, and let's make friends with the robots. But if we
Yeah.
don't want them to replace us, then let's not do that.
Yeah, I agree. Just on, I think a final note. I think we've been going for almost an hour. Did you see that Elon said that Teslas, after you buy them, just go back to your self-driving comment, they are now when you buy them, they're going to drive themselves to your house.
Wow.
I was like, that's
No.
freaking cool. Like they're rolling it out. I think next month. I think he said
Yes.
you buy one and it goes from the dealership to your house. I was like, that's freaking awesome.
Well, one of the things I have watched him, and this is another thing, if you're a visionary who's like, oh, constantly like watching the news and stuff, that's a good sign that you're probably a visionary because you're trying to like
Yeah.
ascertain trend and navigation. And but what I was going to say is something really interesting that I have been hearing them talk about more and more, and I'm trying to learn more about myself. And I think society in general is trying to figure this out because things are changing so rapidly. But he said that somehow you would have your autonomous vehicle, but you could lease your autonomous
Yes.
vehicle back to the fleet and actually earn money off your car.
Oh, they're going to take Uber down.
I'm like,
That's yeah. Uber's
genius.
I saw that. I was like, "Ooh, Uber's done." Because yeah, I mean, who wouldn't? You sit there, you buy a Tesla, it shows up at your house, and then you put it into earnings mode, and it goes out and drives a bunch of people around. That comes back to your house. I was like,
Yeah.
that's pretty crazy, but I think it's absolutely going to happen, and it
Well,
makes way
I
more
just
sense.
love the vision around how, and plus he has a vision. And again, we're just talking about vision here,
Talking
right? The
visionaries.
vision that a Tesla could be less than 20K.
Hmm.
So there he's thinking about affordability because right now affordability is fairly limited.
Right. Yeah.
Not everybody's going to be driving around in a Tesla.
Hmm.
But if they reduce the affordability of it and they put earnings capacity to it, it just changes the game for people
Yeah.
like my son Trace, who is likely going to have to pursue disability just to take care of his medical issues. I've always been an advocate and a proponent, and I've even told my son this is like, there's just too much opportunity in the world for us to just resign ourselves to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what can we do other than just acquiesce
Hmm.
to this is the only way to do this? And
Yeah.
so, I always get excited about this disruption part, although it's fatiguing and it's getting more fatiguing by the day for true.
Just gotta just hang on for the ride, I guess. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining. I want to do more of these like team-based money shop episodes because did I tell you I sent an email out yesterday and then I had somebody respond and say that like I was talking about how I'm meeting our new employee that we just hired, and they responded with like, "I think you just made all of this up and you don't have any employees." I was like, "God dang it! I gotta start having these people on so people like so that people know that it's an actual business." But it was great. I love talking about it. I'm sure you can come back on
Yeah.
and talk about. We can talk about whatever. We can talk about
I'll
taxes.
talk about anything anytime. I know we have a lot of exciting things going on, and
Hmm.
it's a good adventure. And I
Yeah.
think the fun thing about what we do is we get to stay in the driver's seat even if we feel like we're not. We do.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Absolutely.
yeah, thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.